Hello, everyone, and welcome to this reading of the Gaza Monologues presented by Golden Thread Productions and Aviva Arts in response to the urgent call put out by Masrah ASHTAR of Ramallah to theater makers around the world to publicly read or perform the Gaza Monologues. On November 29, 2023, which is today, the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian People, an annual observance established by the United Nations aimed at raising awareness about Palestine and supporting justice, equality, and freedom for the Palestinian people. My name is Sahar Assaf. I'm the Executive Artistic Director of Golden Thread Productions. We usually begin by acknowledging that Golden Thread is on the unceded lands of the Ramayatush Ohlone people, who, despite the atrocities of colonization and genocide, persist today and are active in efforts to preserve and revive their culture. As we acknowledge the painful truth of this part of our history in the US, we must recognize a parallel with the ongoing genocide and ethnic cleansing against Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip and West Bank. As an American theater company devoted to the Middle East and whose mission is driven by the necessity of changing the negative perspectives about the people of the Middle East in the US, we are outraged by the mainstream media's continuous complicity in dehumanizing Palestinians and silencing their narrative. We also denounce the US administration for granting impunity to Israel and for sanctioning war and genocide using our taxpayer dollars. We condemn Israel's settler colonialism, military occupation, and its system of apartheid, its collective punishment of Palestinians, use of banned weapons, targeting civilians in Gaza and the West Bank, and carpet bombing of residential areas, hospitals, mosques, churches, and schools. As we mourn the loss of innocent lives in Palestine and Israel as a result of the escalated violence, we are moved by the Palestinian people's resilience, strength, and spirit, and the fearlessness of the Jewish people who are speaking up against what the state of Israel is committing in their name. I invite you all to read our full statement of solidarity on our website and check out the list of resources to learn more about the history of this struggle. Before I turn it to Deborah Elizer from Aviva Arts, I would like to thank our 32 readers, artists, and community members for lending their voices to these powerful testimonies written by Gazan youth in 2010 after the first war on the Gaza Strip. And I would like to thank you, our attendees in the Zoom room, and those tuning in via HowlRound to listen to and honor these voices and stories. We are deeply grateful for the opportunity to present this reading today in an act of solidarity with ASHTAR Theatre of Ramallah and with Palestine. I will turn it now to Deborah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deborah Eliezer, and I'm the Artistic Director of Aviva Arts and a resident artist of Golden Thread. As an Iraqi Jew with family in Israel-Palestine, it is an honor and privilege for me to express my solidarity today with my Palestinian brothers and sisters. And I especially want to welcome all Jews into this space and emphasize that the Palestinian struggle for freedom is by necessity our struggle too. Aviva Arts rejects the colonialist mindset that war secures safety. We believe that everyone is in harm's way when we allow war to be the only answer. We denounce all those who wield authority, be it governmental, military, or non-state capacities, for engaging in acts of violence and fostering systemic discrimination. We condemn the actions of the Israeli government that have led to the ongoing systemic oppression and suffering of Palestinians. We support all efforts that bridge perceived divides. At Aviva Arts, we believe arts practice is freedom practice, a ritual of meaning-making and a conduit for healing. The voice is the bridge between the mind and the heart. As you listen, I invite you to observe what may come up in your body. Notice what you feel, how you breathe, and what makes an impression on you. Then have a conversation about your experience with at least one other person, which is itself an act of resistance. We'll have resources for further learning and actions you can take at the end of the monologue, so stay with us. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And now, a word from Marina Johnson with some dramaturgical remarks.
Thank you, Deborah. The Gaza Monologues were written by youth in Gaza after the 2008-2009 bombardment. In 2010, Iman Aoun, artistic director and co-founder of ASHTAR Theatre in Ramallah, contacted Ali Abu Yassin, who would work with the group and help them write and tell their stories, which is what you will hear today. My hope with these remarks is to provide some context for what has been happening in Gaza in the past almost 20 years. In August of 2005, Israeli forces withdrew from Gaza after 38 years of occupying it since 1967. The next year, Hamas won a democratic election with a 46% majority popular vote in Gaza. Israel, the US, and other countries did not like this and attempted to overthrow the election results. Israel then imposed a blockade on Gaza, consisting of a series of sanctions that have continued to this day, which severely limit how much electricity is available in Gaza, their water supply, restricting the imports that are able to get in and out of Gaza, and closing the border so Gazans cannot leave the country. One of the many ways that this affects the citizens of Gaza, in order for cancer patients or people who have needs that exceed the capacities of Gazan hospitals, they need to apply for a permit from Israel to travel to Jerusalem. Often these permits are denied. In 2017, 54% of the people who applied for permits received them, with the other 46% not, and at least 50s died of this as a direct result of being denied the life-saving medical treatment. Israel also controls the airspace and coastline, giving Gazans limited space in which they can fish or swim. And these are just the, I would say, spark notes. In 2006, the Voice Glass, then a senior advisor to Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, was quoted as saying, quote, "The idea is to put the Palestinians on a diet, but not make them die of hunger," end quote. A document was later found that showed Israel calculating the amount of food that Gazans need to avoid malnutrition, and they would only let that amount enter Gaza. For more than a decade, when analysts described the strategy utilized by Israel against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, they used a metaphor. Israeli forces were mowing the grass. The phrase implies that Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are weeds that need to be cut back. A brief history of the bombings in Gaza. In 2008-2009, it was a 23-day bombardment with 1,400 Palestinians killed. In 2012, it was an 8-day series of bombings in which 174 Palestinians were killed. In 2014, it lasted for 50 days with 2,100 Palestinians killed. In 2021, 11 days with at least 260 people killed. And as of 1 week ago, the current amount of people killed in the 2023 attacks on Gaza, the ethnic cleansing and genocide, since October 7th were 15,000, with at least 7,000 people missing, presumed dead. With that somber information that gives us our context for where we are, I turn it over to Amel.
Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you to today's solidarity event, this presentation of the Gaza Monologues by ASHTAR Theatre. I just want to talk a little bit about what you're going to see today. We have 31 actors reading in 4+ different languages, Arabic, Persian, Farsi, English represented. And in order to make that possible, we actually are going to be dropping a link. The Gaza Monologues has been translated into 14 different languages, 14+, and we'll be dropping a link to all those translations so you can download your versions. You can follow along. We have a gift today of one of the monologues, the 16th monologue being read in actually 2 languages, Persian and English. So just to note that one will have 2 performers doing that one. And I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Amal Bisharat. I'm an artist in residence at Golden Thread. And I would love for you guys to introduce yourselves as well. So feel free to introduce yourselves on the chat. Let us know where you're from. And as we hear these monologues, feel free to show love for the readers or the writers in the chat. Anything that speaks to you, yeah, we'd love to hear what you have to say as we go. Is that all? Yes. The last thing we're going to share before we actually get into the play itself is I'd love to share a message from the executive artistic director of ASHTAR Theatre in Ramallah, who put out this call to theaters internationally to do the monologues in solidarity for International Day of Solidarity with Palestine. And so we're just going to hear a brief message from Iman Un from ASHTAR Theatre in Ramallah.
Hello, old and new friends of ASHTAR Theatre and Palestine. I would like to thank you all for being with us on this call. I am Iman Un, co-founder of ASHTAR Theatre, creator of the Gaza Monologues. When we did the Gaza Monologues back in 2010, we thought that that would be the first and last war on our people in Gaza. But alas, it did not work out. Therefore, there was another war, and another, and another, and it continued on and on and on for the last 17 years. At the moment, with all that you have seen in the media and all that you have done in your countries, in your cities, still nothing on the ground is being changed. We, as a small company in Palestine, we're trying to keep the voice of the people of Palestine and of the people of Gaza heard. And therefore, we are calling upon you that these monologues, they do not only go into your hearts and minds, but that these monologues will become a paveway for a real change, a real pressure on your governments to take action that will bring justice and long-lasting solution for a sovereign state for Palestine, that the world will all agree to have and will all recognize the state of Palestine. Because through peace and with peace, we can all live as regular people. Thank you. Thank you for being with us on this call, and we are all together to save our humanity.
Ahmed al-Ruzzi, age 17, born 1993, الوحدة ستريت. قبل الحرب كنت أحس غزة أمي التانية، أرضها صدرها الدافي اللي أرتمي عليه، سماها أحلامي بلا حدود، وبحرها غاسل همومي. بس اليوم بحس إنها منفى، بطلت أحس إنها بلد أحلامي. تعرفوا ليش؟ خليني أقولكم. في الحرب الترنس الرئيسي للكهرباء انضرب صاروخ مرتب. كل عمومي كانوا عنا في البيت والكهرباء انقطعت، بس في خط تاني شغال لكن بعيد عن الدار. رحت عند جارنا أطلب منه وصلة كهرباء عشان نمد من الخط التاني. بعد ما بديناه والدار نورت، أجا جارنا بده يسترجع الوصلة، وبدل ما إحنا نمد صار هو بده يمد. علقت طوشة بيني وبينه للسما. في الحرب بصير كل واحد يقول يا الله يا نفسي. في الحرب كمان كان في كتير ناس عندهم 20 شوال طحين والغاز عندهم ما انقطعش، وناس ما عندهم كسرة خبز. يطلبوا من الجيران الخبز الحاف وما يعطيهمش. معظم الناس سكرت بقفل حديد على حاجاتها وقرروا ما يعطوا إشي لحدا. بس في ناس تانيين كان فيهم الخير وكانوا يساعدوا. نرجع لموضوعنا. إحنا ما رضينا نعطيه الوصلة مع إنها وصلته، ولأول مرة بكتشف قديش ممكن نكون سيئين. أخذنا جزائنا على المحل. الدار اللي جنبنا انقصفت، وانقصفت نصفين ونصها هال علينا. تركنا الوصلة والكهرباء والجمل بما حمل وهربنا عند دار عمي جنب منتزه البلدية. دار عمي قريبة من السرايا، والمغرب صارت الناس تقول السرايا رح تنقصف، ولما السرايا تنقصف يمكن دار عمي تطير وتختفي عن الوجود. صرنا قاعدين مش عارفين إيش نعمل وين نروح. أبوي صار يطمئنا، ما تقلقوش ما تخافوش مش رح يصير إشي، ضلينا على هالحال للساعة 12 في الليل. كل الوقت نسمع صوت الصواريخ والانفجارات، وأبوي ضل يقول ما تقلقوش ما تخافوش، وفجأة قال وراي بدنا نرجع على الدار، وصار يرجف وكلنا صرنا نرجف معه. أمي صارت تصيح وعمي أكل هوا. المهم هربنا كلنا في نص الليل وإحنا ودار عمي. رجعنا على دارنا جري، ما صدقنا نصل الجار، ولليوم مش متذكر وين نمنا وكيف نمنا. المهم بعدنا عن السرايا، لقينا جارنا ماخد وصلة الكهرباء، وقضينا الليل على العتمة ودار جارنا منورة. وقتها حسيت إنه كان معه حق ياخد وصلته. بعدها أبوي صار عنده عقدة وصلات، جاب 3 وصلات كهرباء و6 أجرار وطنجرتين كهرباء و20 نيون و20 باكيت شمع و6 كراتين معلبات و10 باكيتات شنابر و6 كشفات وكرتونتين حجار راديو. إحنا عايشين حالة حرب ولازم انحطاط لحد ما الله يفرجها. وأنا صار عندي عقدة أصعب من كل العقد. كل عقد الناس كوم، وأنا عقدتي الكوم. كأني قبل الحرب كنت كريم، أو يمكن ما كنتش أعرف قيمة الأشياء، بس بعد الحرب ما شاء الله علي صرت حريص على كل إشي وأي إشي، لأني ما كنت أتخيل إنه في يوم مش رح ألاقي شربة المي أو كسرة الخبز. صرت لما بدي أعمل شاي بالكاد أحليه، وإذا قسمت رغيف خبز ممنوع أخلصه. فقدت شهيتي للأكل، صرت اقتصادي على الآخر. أبوي بيقول أحمد مصروفه دائما معه، طبعا لأني باخده وبخبيه أحسن ما تيجي حرب تانية. صرت حاسس حالي متزوج وعندي 10 أولاد، خايف من الحياة، خايف من كل إشي، من أصغر الأشياء، دائما قلقان. حاسس كل غزة قاعدة على رمال متحركة. أي جنون ممكن حدا يتخيله ممكن يصير في لحظة في هالبلد، ممكن تتحقق في أحلام كثير كمان. بلد غريب، فيش في منطق. الصين صارت ثلث العالم، بيشتغلوا كلهم مش ملحقين على غزة كنادر وبلايز. غزة بتاكل الدنيا أكل، وكل الدنيا بتهيل عليها، وبتضل تكابر كأنها ملهاش إشي. الحقيقة إنها مليانة فقر. في ناس بتلملم أكل من الزبايل. المصيبة إنه إحنا كل مالنا عم نرجع لورا، والمصيبة الأكبر إنه فيش مطب يوقفنا. كل هاوية إلها قاع، وغزة ما إلها قاع. أنا بحلم أعيش يوم واحد بحرية، وبظن إنه هذا حلم مش كبير، لكنه صعب يتحقق. حلمي كمان نقضي على الانقسام الفلسطيني اللي مشكل انفصام في شخصياتنا. أنا تعبت من التفكير ومش عارف أبطل أفكر، بس العبد في التفكير والرب في التدبير. ومع السلامة يا كبير.
أحمد طه age 14 born 1996 الدرج. طول عمري بفكر غزة أكبر بلد في الدنيا وأحلى بلد في العالم، بس مرة رحت مع أبي على يافا رجعت راسي مقلوب. حسيت غزة قد خرم الإبرة ومش حلوة، وكل مالها بتصير أعطل وأصغر، ما في حدا بيقدر يتنفس، وفوق كل هاد ممنوع نسافر. كل ما أمشي بشوارع غزة بختنق، صورة يافا مش راضية تروح عن بالي، بقول إحنا وين والعالم وين. عشان هيك دايما قاعد على البحر، لأنه بحسه مش من غزة. بضلني أكتب اسمي على الشط وبيجي الموج وبيمحيه. قبل الحرب كنت حابب أكون مهندس إلكترونيات، بس بعد الحرب صرت أكره أروح المدرسة. حاسس إني مش راح أكون إشي مهم بحياتي، ولو صرت طز كله ملحق بعضه في هالبلد. يعني راح أكون أحلى وردة فوق مزبلة. أول ما صار القصف كل مدارس غزة روحت إلا إحنا. ناظر المدرسة من حرصه على الدوام ما خلانا نروح. صاروا الأولاد يهللوا وصاروا كلهم بالساحة بلحظة. والغريب بالموضوع إنه إحنا بمدرسة الزيتونة، يعني اللي جنب الجوازات، يعني اللي الضربة الأولى كانت فيها. ومع أول ضربة طارت شقفة من الصاروخ على أكبر شجرة بالمدرسة وقسمتها نصفين مثل عود القصب. من حد ما شفنا هالمنظر ما حدا ضل بالمدرسة، لا طالب ولا معلم ولا الناظر. يا روح ما بعدك روح. فكرت إنه الشهيد الوحيد اللي راح أشوفه في الحرب هو الشجرة، بس من لحظة ما وصلت الدار 4 شهداء بشارعنا وكأنهم بيستنوني أودعهم. ما خلص من وداعهم إلا 3 شهداء تانيين من نفس العيلة من حارتنا وصلوا. ما دفناهم ورجعنا إلا دار جيراننا بالضبط بيننا وبينهم دار هاشم. الجيش خلعهم صاروخ مسحوا الدار عن الخريطة، كلهم ماتوا. أكتر شيء حزنت عليه البنات الصغار. حسيت إنه الحرب عايمة علي أنا لحالي من دون كل أهل غزة، ومن أول نهار وأنا بشوف شهداء. مستشفى الشفا شفت منظر عمري ما بنساه. مئات الجثث فوق بعض، دمهم ولحمهم وعظمهم سايح على بعض. لا بتعرف المرأة من الرجال ولا حتى مين الطفل. أكوام لحم فوق السراير، وناس كتير بتبكي بتصرخ، مو عارفين وين أولادهم، وين رجالهم، وين نسوانهم. ليلتها روحت من المستشفى، ضليتني صاحي للصبح من الخوف. فكرت بس هديك الليلة مش رح أنام. بس أنا للنوم بس أنا لليوم بشوفهم قدامي وبعرفش أنام.
أشرف السوسي, age 16, born 1994, الوحدة ستريت. كان كل أولاد الحارة يحبوه، كان أهدى من النسمة، ياخد مصروفه من بابايا ويديهوني. كل الناس كانت تحبه. أصحابه جم وراح معاهم للمدرسة، طلعوا يجروا زي الفراشات طايرين من على الأرض طير، كأن الدنيا اتخلقت علشانهم. الطيران الإسرائيلي في الجو، صوت الطيارة زي الوحش اللي عايز ينقض على الفريسة. عربية مطاردين ماشية بشارع اليرموك، والفراشات قريبة من السيارة. الفراشة مش عارفة إذا كانت السيارة هي النار اللي هتحرقها. صاروخ نزل على السيارة. أخويا طار من على الأرض 5 متر. طارق طار أعلى من السيارة ونزل يمشي كأن مفيش حاجة حصلت. جت سيارة الإسعاف وخدوا الجثث. الناس قالوا له اركب السيارة يا طارق، قال لهم مفيش حاجة أنا كويس، وراح للمدرسة. بعد 100 متر مشي حط إيده على قلبه ومات شهيد. كنت أنا في الشارع مستني الأتوبيس المدرسة. أختي كلمتني روح شوف إيه اللي حصل. رحت بس ما لقيتش طارق، وكملت ماشية على المدرسة. وأنا في المدرسة أعمامي وخوالي جم وقالوا لي أنت هتتغيب عن المدرسة لمدة 3 أيام. أنا ما كنتش فاهم ليه. ركبنا العربية، عمي قال للسواق سكر الأخبار، اقفل الأخبار مش عايزين نسمع. وقتها شكيت لأن عمي بيحب يسمع الأخبار. وصلنا البيت، كان في ناس كتير قوي في البيت وحوالين البيت، وقبل ما أنزل من السيارة شفت أبويا قاعد على الكرسي بيبكي. كنت الأول مرة بشوف أبويا بيبكي، وكان ماسك صورة طارق أخويا. سألته بابا أخويا استشهد؟ قال الله يرحمه. عربية الإسعاف جابته من المستشفى، جرينا كلنا عشان نودعه. كان نايم زي الملك، وفي إيديه الكتب اللي كان شايلها وهو رايح المدرسة. أبويا مرضاش نروح معاه المقبرة، بس أنا ركبت في العربية معاهم ورحت وودعته وقريت الفاتحة على قبره. وقعدت 3 شهور كل يوم أروح وأقعد عند قبره وأتكلم معاه أحكيله. بالليل بسرح في صورته اللي في الأوضة مكتوب عليها الشهيد البطل طارق. من يوم ما طارق استشهد اتعودت أنام على السرير لوحدي. كنا بننام جنب بعض، رجل عند راس. الواحد ساعات ما كانش عارف فين أطرافه، بس النهاردة بقى ليا سرير لوحدي. أنا عمري ما راح أنسى أخويا.
Ella Hajjaj, age 14, born 1996. Al-Shujaiya al-Montar. I feel like running in the streets till my headscarf flies in the sky and I fly after it. Sometimes I feel like being totally crazy, but I can't. It's the first time I say things like this. Maybe they're not the kind of things I say, or maybe they're the things that I can't express, or I'm scared to express. Why do my parents treat me like this? I look at the girls my age, how they're living their lives, and I envy them. I wish I could be like them in their confidence and freedom. I wish a ship would carry me to a distant island and throw me on its shore, far away from the world, from everything, especially the war. Speaking of the war, all the war was one pile and Mom was the other. I'll never understand why my mom kept describing things to me that I'd already seen. She and I were standing on the balcony. They bombed our neighbor's house and one of the neighbors died. We saw how the house was destroyed and how the corpse flew onto the street. And you can imagine what happened to the family after that. Did it end? No, it didn't. Mom started telling me about how our neighbor's house was bombed and how our neighbor flew from the house, like she was talking to someone who hadn't been standing with her. And on it went, stories from Mom all through the war, and I was the only listener. We'd be sitting watching TV, and they would say there was bombing or destruction in some place. The report would be 15 minutes long, but Mom's repeated report would be 2 hours. She'd talk about the report like I hadn't been with her. I started to doubt myself. Had I been sitting with her or not? I swear, I was there. I really was there. I was sitting next to her. Anyway, thankfully Mom isn't with you, otherwise she'd give you a headache with her stories.
Amani Ashurafa, age 18, born 1992, Al-Rimal. Gaza is a plane carrying people and traveling towards the unknown, landing neither in heaven nor in hell. No one knows when it will land. And people may stay suspended like that for twice my lifetime. All days here are the same. There's nothing new. The simplest thing is that dreams and wishes are hard to make true in Gaza, especially if they're like mine. To be an artist, singing and acting and playing music. In Gaza, the only music is that of death and dancing on wounds. If I go abroad and study directing, how would society look at me? After I graduate, would the country be like now or worse? Everything for me is foggy and unclear, like people's faces on Friday at Firas Market. And like the day the war began. The first hit was at the Ministry of Passports. My friend and I came out of an exam. It was the first day of the first term exams. We sat in front of the school gate talking and waiting for the rest of our friends so we'd go home together. Suddenly, there was a series of explosions. I was in shock and felt that I was going to die. We ran away and I was really scared. I saw the women running and screaming and beating their faces, and I had no idea what was going on. I felt I couldn't stand on my legs, and the world started spinning. I fainted and stopped feeling anything. Then I woke up to my friend's voice shouting, "Amani, for God's sake, wake up." When I woke up, I started crying, not knowing where to go or what to do. An older girl helped me and took me home. As soon as I arrived, my mother took me in her arms. I was very tired, but at that moment, I rested. I needed to fall into someone's arms. The hardest thing is to feel that your moment of death is near. The war was a black ghost that covered Gaza's day and night. It imposed its hell on people, on the earth and sky and air that we breathe. After the war, I had a breakdown. A big, wild wave overtook my soul. I was thinking I wouldn't be able to come out from under it. But it was like a hand was extended me through the theater. A rubber ring that pulled me out from under the wave. Today, I feel comfort that I haven't felt in a long time. And I hope I can always stay like this.
Amjad Abu Yassin, age 17, born 1993, Ashati Camp. A day before the war, Gaza for me was joy and happiness, trips and going to the sea. Life seemed to be happy, and I wasn't thinking about anything. I had one dream, that Gaza would develop in art and sports. I felt that everything was fine except those two things. But it turned out nothing was fine. No art, sports, health, or safety. It's all the same. Gaza stopped being the city of my dreams because my dream is to be an actor. Am I going to be an actor for 20 people in Gaza and wait till the border opens? If it was in my hands, I would try as much as possible to reduce wars, death, and violence. It's a shame for every drop of blood that falls on the ground. I hate the silence and the abnormal tolerance that people have. I wish all Gaza would wake up tomorrow and walk the streets shouting loudly, "Enough!" when the war started, we were playing football, and the atmosphere was strange. The sky was red. Suddenly, we heard the sound of a plane. I never heard a sound like that. We were all scared and lay on the ground, waiting for death. After that, we heard the sound of a loud explosion meters away from us. We started looking in each other's faces and silently saying goodbye. Turned out the bombing wasn't meant for us. It was targeting a car of wanted men on the road above. But we kept lying down, waiting for the second rocket. And all I could think of was my two older brothers who were with me. I was more afraid for them than for myself. And I think they felt the same way. I carried my sports shorts and ran away from the field. As I ran, I stepped on a piece of shrapnel. I took it out of my leg and went out onto the street and saw them. They were 3 martyrs, and you couldn't make out their features. The first one's legs were on fire. He was looking at me and I at him. Among everyone there, he was warning me about something I didn't understand. It was then that I knew he was warning me about a car coming fast towards us. Then, I knew the real meaning of death. And instead of being 3 martyrs, they could have been 4. I was shocked at the scene. I stood there watching, and when I woke up after passing out, I ran home. The war came and went, and we're still living in it. The victims are always the poor people who have nothing to do with anything. Even when there's an earthquake or a flood in any country, the victims are the poor people, as though there's a universal conspiracy against them. After the war, everyone started lying to everyone else. Lies, cheating, dishonesty, deceitfulness. For positions and interests, the leaders and powerful people commit slaughters and crimes without batting an eyelid or feeling any guilt. Poor people get poorer and sick ones get sicker. I've lost trust in all mottos. The biggest speech from the biggest leader is bullshit. All speeches in the world don't warm up a cold person or someone sleeping in a tent after the war. The crisis is that the whole world is watching us as though there's nothing going on, and they're still making speeches.
Anas Abu Aita, age 15, born 1995, الشيخ رضوان. من أنا وطفل صغير بحب كون لاعب كرة مشهور. كنت آمن إنه رح حقق أحلامي، بس اليوم شو في مليون عقبة بتوقف بطريقي. أول شي ما في ملاعب للكبار ولا حتى للصغار، وإجا الحصار وزود الطين بلة. لو كنت رئيس الوزراء كان أكتر شي بهتم فيه وزارة الشباب والرياضة. ببني ملاعب بكل المطارح خصوصي بالمدارس، وبسمح للطلاب يلعبوا بحرية مش البواب يطردون، وبلغي رسوم النوادي وبحافظ على كل المنتزهات. بس الأحلام والأمان والأمل والمستقبل كلها هاي كلمات ما إلها معنى ببلد بتقتل أصغر حلم ممكن. أنا كنت حارس مرمى، وصاحبي محمد كان يضل يقول لي رح دخل عليك هدف جول، بس أنا كنت دايما صد أهدافه. بسبعة كانون الثاني 2009، يعني يوم من أيام الحرب، كنت قاعد على باب الدار والجو ضباب. إجا واحد يقول لي صاحبك محمد استشهد. أنا طبعا ما صدقت الخبر، رحت أدور على صاحبي وخفت كتير من فكرة الموت. يعني وصلت على المسجد لقيت أغلى صاحب بحياتي محمد ملفوف بعلم فلسطين ومقطع شقف. كيت كتير، يعني كتير. بكيت وحزنت لأنه ما قدرت بوسه ولا أحضنه، وصرت أحسس عليه. أخدناه على المقبرة دفناه، وضليت قاعد عنده وقلت له إني بحبه وإني زعلان كتير، زعلان لأنه تركني لحالي بهالدنيا. وأنا طالع من المقبرة صار قصف كتير، حسيت إنه ملاك الموت عم بلاحقني ومش حالل عني، بس الحمد لله بعدني عايش.
إيهاب العيان, age 16, born 1994, Al-Saftawi Street. From when I first became aware of the world, I've had limited thinking. Life for me was to be born, grow up, get married, have kids, work, raise them, feed them, educate them, marry them off, and then die. But after the war, I found that life is much harder than that. It turned out that every small step we take has a million knots behind it. I'm scared of not finding work when I grow up, because wherever I go, I see men sitting in front of their houses with nothing to do. It's what scares and saddens me the most. That's why kids in Gaza took responsibility and were denied their childhood since birth. My mother always used to say, Iheb is the best one of my kids, because I was always at home, never had any problems.
Recording in progress.
When the war started, my father locked us up at home because of how scared he was for us. 2 hours later, I was bored. I went out to walk around the house, but this time the walk was different. I was afraid to walk near the cars in case they were bombed. And all the time I kept looking up at the sky in case a plane would come and bomb me without me knowing. I was terrified, even though the Saftawi district didn't see a lot of activity. I went back home running as though from something terrifying and stayed at home till the war was over. After the war, my life changed a lot. My relationship with people and the neighbors improved. I became known to the men of the neighborhood and started playing checkers with the old people. I started spending all my time outside the house. Can't stay inside for a minute. And my mother stopped saying, Ihab is the best one of my kids. I discovered that it didn't exist before the war, but after the war, here I am, God protect me, in the city, breathing its air, singing, dancing, and crying with it, and life is rolling onwards.
Tamer Najem. Tamer Najem, age 17, born 1993, Sheikh al-Razwan. Gaza is a matchbox, and we're the matches inside it. When the war started on Gaza, all the media was focused on us. Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, and all the satellite channels were focused on Gaza. And the occupation wouldn't leave us alone. The whole world became busy with Gaza and what's happening in it. Suddenly, Al Jazeera wrote, "Breaking news, death of Muhammad al-Hindi." And it wasn't normal because that Muhammad, he's my uncle, my mother's brother. It was the first time I saw the screaming move from a live broadcast on TV to the house. Screaming and yelling and tears, all of it mixed up together, and it moved from our house to the street, and my mom fainted. A while later, the phone rang. It was my second uncle calling to tell us that Muhammad was martyred. He didn't know that the whole world knew the news. This television is awful. Before a person is shot, as the bullet is on its way to his chest. The television has already broadcast the news. Since then, all the channels are sitting idle, praying to God to send another war on Gaza, so they have work. Anyway, we all started crying bitterly for my uncle and remembering him and talking about him. We kept talking about him for a long time. Then the talk started getting less because death became normal in Gaza. After the war, I stopped caring whether I live or die. After what we saw in the war, I don't care about anything because I think each day I live is the biggest bonus. And all the life I live after the war is extra because I could have died at any second. You know, I'm sick of the city, even though I love it. And I'm sick of the people too. Sometimes I feel that I know the 1.5 million who are in Gaza. There's nothing new. The same day is repeated every day. I feel like traveling, like changing scenes and faces. As soon as I wake up every morning, I see the electricity pole in my face. I wish I'd wake up one day and not find it there. Each day, Abu Ibrahim stands at the door of the supermarket, and Abed, the bean seller, is selling the beans, and Abu El Abed is sitting at the door of his house, afraid that his house might run away. Ibrahim is standing with Hassan. I know the taxi drivers one by one. I know who takes you to the city and who goes to the beach. It's exhausting. It's soul draining. The only hour that's different in my life is the one when I come to theater practice. It became my work and mission. I wait for it impatiently. Without the theater, I would have gone crazy. When I grow up, I want to be a big actor. I love acting since I was a kid.
هيماء عكاشة, age 13, born 1997, التفاح. معكرونة مجدرة شعرية ومعلبات أشكال وألوان. شي صنع بالمغرب، شي صنع بالصين ومن سريلانكا والباكستان والصومال، ومش مهم تاريخ الصلاحية. بالحرب كانت كل الشوارع علب معلبات فارغة. كتير ولاد صغار انجرحت إجريهم من العلب الفاضية. الاحتلال كان شان علينا الحرب أرض وسما، ونحن معلنين حرب شعواء على الأكل. كنا ناكل باليوم 100 مرة، كل ما نفتح عينينا من الساعة 6 الصبح لتاني يوم الساعة 6 الصبح ونحن عم ناكل. كنت فكر إنه بيتنا لحالنا هيك، بس لما سألت حكولي كل غزة انفجعت على الأكل. أنا كنت فكر إنه حالة الحرب ومشاهد الشهداء والدمار بتصد النفس عن الأكل، بس الظاهر إنه حالة الخوف والرعب والقلق بتخلي الإنسان يجوع وياكل أكتر. ويمكن كمان وجود العيلة كلها عنا وخصوصاً البنات ساعد. كانت الشاطرة اللي بدها تتفنن كيف تعمل أكل أذكى، والغلبان أبوي مش ملحق ينقل أكياس أكل أشكال وألوان. الأكل اللي أكلناه بال20 يوم بالحرب بكفي سنة. المشكلة كل ما بحكي بديش آكل باكل أكتر. بس لما أكبر صير صحفية أو محامية أو رئيسة وزراء. صحفية كرمال صور الجمال والحلاوة والبساطة اللي بغزة، لأني بحبها، بحب ملحها وترابها وهواها، وما بتصور حالي أعيش ببلد غيرها. ونفسي أكون محامية عشان دافع عن كل المحرومين والمظلومين بالبلد، لأني مش حابة أشوف حدا عم بيعاني فيه. وبتمنى أكون رئيسة وزراء عشان أفرض القانون والنظام على البلد، لأنه من هون ببلش الحل.
Rawan Jarour, age 13, born 1997, Al Daraj. Relax, girls. Don't be scared. This is just the sound of aimless shooting. That's what our teacher said as soon as the bombing started. After a while, her mobile phone rang and she spoke a few words only. 120 martyrs. She smashed her mobile on the floor and told us, "Go home, all of you." As soon as we went out into the yard, we saw our parents, some of them in pajamas, some in their undershirts, and some barefoot. We were very scared. My two sisters and I kept waiting for Dad, but he was really late. So we decided to go home by ourselves, even though it's a long way. On the way, I saw something for the very first time, a martyr being carried on a coffin wrapped in the flag of Palestine, with banners around him and people crying. But the weird thing is that the funeral barely had 30 people in it. Funerals of martyrs usually have thousands. And then I felt there was really something big, catastrophic going on in the country. I got scared for Dad. I didn't want him to come and get us because I was scared he'd get hit by a rocket. I was also scared of dying, and I didn't want to die now because it would be a catastrophe if I died and no one came to my funeral. I started running home and people were running around us like it was doomsday. No one knew where they were going because the sound of the rockets didn't stop. Every few seconds, a rocket would fall and shake the ground. I felt that the streets were not the same streets, nor were the people the same people. Strange sights, sounds, and smells. After the war, a lot of things changed inside of me. I started hating going to the bathroom. From the second I go in, I can't wait to come running out because all the time in the war, I was afraid they'd hit a rocket on the house when I'm in the bathroom. There, one would be in great focus and you know the rest. I also started hating the morning line at school. When the war started, I was in line. That's why today I sometimes feel that the minutes in the line are hours of fear and worry. All of school for me is one pile and the line is another. I started having terrifying dreams. All night, I have a conflict within myself between the desire to sleep and fear of nightmares. Sleep became a monster hiding behind my eyelids. I stay like that till morning. I don't know when I slept or when I woke up. I want to become an actress, but this is a hard dream to fulfill in Gaza, especially for girls. I tell myself it's a shame for the people in Gaza to be deprived of my talent because I could become an important actress. But if they don't want me, to hell with them. I'll go to any country and I'll act there. Gazans are deprived of everything anyway. It doesn't stop at theater. Sometimes I think people in Gaza can barely find food. How are they going to go to theater? You know, I wish I could live in a civil, democratic society with peace and 20 cinemas and keep watching movies and flying in my imagination and my dreaming.
Reem Afana, age 14, born 1996, El Saftawi Street. When I was young, I used to feel that I was the happiest child in the world. But the more I grow and my mind grows, the more my worry grows. Because I start to understand things that I did not. I started to know the meaning of a deprived child. The thing that upsets me and makes me cry the most are children's tears. All children in the world, regardless of their nationality, religion, or color. When I grow up, I want to be a pediatrician, and that's the hope that gives me a big push in life. Even though I'm fed up, bored, and sad, because Gaza doesn't have life anymore. Yesterday, I was sitting in school and I heard the sound of planes. I got really scared.
I wanted to run away from school. I felt I was going to die because I remembered the war. The scenes of war won't leave my mind. On the third day of the war, my family was sitting together, talking about what was happening in the war, and my grandmother was reassuring us so we wouldn't be scared. We were actually calmed, even though the sound of rockets didn't stop. But my grandmother's warm voice was calming us. The phone rang. The lines never caught in the war. So when we heard the sound of the phone, we were happy. Hello? Yes. This is the Israeli Defense Army. You have 5 minutes to clear the house. It's for your own benefit. We have warned you. I couldn't stand on my legs anymore. Everyone in the house started yelling. My grandmother was the first one to run away. It was the first time I'd seen her go so fast. My dad held me and my sisters and told us not to be scared. He was pulling me to leave, but I was going to die if I didn't take my teddy bear with me. I felt that I would betray him if I left him under the bombing. I escaped from Dad's hands and ran to my bear, took him in my arms and left. We all got far away from the house and sat down to wait for the 5 minutes. They were the longest 5 minutes in history. They became 10. We felt like they were years that passed. I was in a whirlwind. Thoughts and dreams were thrashing about in my head, and the world was spinning. I felt that the dream of being a doctor was very, very far away. I held the bear and remembered myself when I was small, how I was always laughing. I want to go back to being small and stay small. I don't want to grow up. But the only thing that comforted me was the love of people who didn't leave us for one moment. Gaza is full of love.
Rima El Sadi, age 15, born 1995, as Sheikh Radwan. I was 9 years old when we returned from the Emirates. It was the first time I visit Gaza, and the car was moving along the street, and I was looking out from the window, and I didn't like anything in the city. When we stood at the traffic light, a lot of kids came to the car begging, selling gum and biscuits, and I hated myself, and I wanted to go back to the Emirates. But since then, I have lived in Gaza, and I will not leave it, even if they give me a choice between it and Paris, because I discovered that the love inside of it is enough for the whole world, and that places are in their people and not in their buildings or their views. Mom always talked to me about Gaza when we were in the Emirates. I liked it because I saw it, but once I lived in it, I liked it more. It had details that Mom didn't see, but it's such a pity. All it needs is safety to be the most beautiful city in the world. In the war, the Taqwa Mosque and the Noor Mosque were bombed. And after that, the house of Abu al-Kare and the Abu al-Kare's house is our topic. They're our neighbors. And the Israeli Secret Service threatened them with a bombing. And people told us, live in the bottom floor, it's safer. So when they bomb the Abu al-Kare's house, it won't hit us. So we all go down to the first floor and waited for the army to bomb Abu al-Kare's house. And they bombed the Noor Mosque instead. And all of the windows and the doors and the stones flew on us when we were in our apartment. I was very injured. All the doors fell on my head. And then, of course, there was screaming and the house was a total mess. So the next day, we had a family meeting and we decided to go back to the upper flat. And we did. We moved up to the top floor. But this time, they hit the Taqwa Mosque. And all the glass and the stones blew on us in the top floor. So we decided to go down to the bottom floor because it's safer. And we sat and waited for the army to bomb Abu al-Kare's house. And that night, they really did. They threw the first rocket and the second, but it didn't explode. And if they threw another rocket and hit the one which didn't explode, the whole neighborhood would have been wiped out. And people would have said, here was Abu al-Kare's neighborhood.
Sami El-Jarjawi, age 16, born 1994, at Tufa. The hour I hate the most in the day is 12 noon. Every time the exams start, I feel that the war will start again. I can't answer any of the exam questions, and thoughts keep floating around in my head till I'm sick of them. I ask myself, is what's happening to me normal, or am I sick? People say the Sea of Gaza washes all pains, but my pain is bigger than the sea. Because the last time I was at the sea, I was with my friend. We swam, played, and had fun. But now I can't go to the sea anymore. The Talatini Street is near the petrol station, and petrol was dear to people and expensive. It was a big deal to have a liter of petrol. There was a war going on, and people were afraid to buy anything. My dad sent me to buy petrol. After I bought it, I went to the house of my friend Zeki, who lives near the station. I was missing him a lot, and I hadn't seen him for more than 10 days. I got to his house, and I was in a hurry because my dad wanted me to return quickly with the petrol. I went inside their house without knocking the door. His mom considers me like her son, and me too. I said hello to her and to my friend, hugged him and kissed him and said hello to his brothers, and quickly left. When there were 20 meters between me and their house, I heard the loud sound of a plane. And after that, the sound of a rocket falling on my friend's house. People started screaming that the house was bombed. I couldn't believe it. I looked back at my friend's house and saw fire and smoke coming out of it. I'd never seen anything like that. I went running back to our house. When I got there, my dad told me, "Your friend died." No, he didn't. Everyone started telling me, "Your friend Zeki died," and I didn't believe them. That's why I didn't go to the funeral, or the hospital, or the cemetery, because Zeki did not die. I always talk to him at night. Well, not exactly to him, to his photo. I'm very upset with him because he doesn't come visit me, and I also stopped visiting him at home. I'm sure he's not dead, and I'm sure there will come a day when we meet. Then I'll blame him because I miss him very much. I have another friend living in Russia. He always tells me about Russia and the freedom and safety that he lives in. I feel that I'm not living. I start wishing that I would dive in the sea and keep diving and diving till I come out and find myself in Russia.
Sajud Abu Hassan, age 15, born 1995, as Sheikh Radwan. What I love most in Gaza is people's kindness and simplicity. And what I hate most is the political party fanaticism. Sometimes I feel that there's a contradiction between all this love and kindness that people have and this evil that controls the surface. If it were in my hands, I'd solve the problem of the Palestinian division tomorrow. In the war, they assassinated a big Hamas leader. All the media in the world covered this incident. But the whole world was in one valley, and we were in the other. Because Modi and Salume, my younger brothers and dad, had gone to our land that's next to the Hamas leader. We called them 1,000 times, and as usual, the Jawal mobile lines wouldn't go through, which stressed us out even more. Mom started pacing the balcony like a small bird whom they have taken her children. She imagined the balcony would somehow rescue Modi and Salume and Dad. I was really stressed. I started crying, I went down to my aunt. My aunt started soothing me. She lied to me and told me she had called them and spoken to them. I knew that she hadn't talked to them. And she was holding me and crying, and I was crying too. When I went to our house, I saw that Mom was still pacing the balcony. I forgot to tell you, Moldi and Salume are 5 and 7 years old. They used to sleep in my arms. My soul was connected to them. I felt at the time my soul was going to escape and that I would die. And honestly, only then I felt that there was a war on Gaza. Because I was busy with the computer all the time, and that day was the first day I lived the war. An hour later, there was knocking at the door of our house, and Dad came back with Moldi and Salume. As much as I loved them, this was the first time I felt how much they were really dear to me, how much I couldn't bear to be parted from them. I put them on my lap and I kissed them like it was the first time I held them. And Mom stopped pacing the balcony. And it was the first time I felt that she loved Dad this way. After the war, I started thinking, why are we like that? Out of the whole world, they took our land, threw us out of our homes, and because we are defending ourselves, this all happened to us? There's no water, no electricity, no phones, no petrol. What are we to the world? Aren't we human?
Soha al-Mamluk, age 15, born 1995, at Tufa. غزه هر روز عوض میشه. برای همین رویاهای منم عوض میشه. و هر دفعه یه قدم میرم جلو، 100 قدم میرم عقب. اول که جنگ شروع شد من تو راه خونه بودم از مدرسه. ولی راه برام آشنا نبود. یهو یه مردی وایساد جلو و پرسید خونت کجاست؟ وقتی بهش گفتم منو برد خونه. وقتی رسیدیم فوری بابام پرسیدم چرا نیومدی دنبال من؟ مامانم گفت عزیزم این نرماله، برو درستو بخون. من گفتم امتحان نداریم، جنگ شروع شده. بعد از ظهر ساختمون دولتی نزدیک خونمونو زدن. مامانم دوباره گفت این چیزا نرماله، ما به این چیزا عادت داریم. ما دویدیم رفتیم خونه همسایه. همه نگران وضع خودشون بودن. بعد از چند دقیقه یک عالمه فامیلای همسایه اومدن و خونه پر شد از بیشتر از 100 تا آدم. ولی هنوز اوضاع برای مادرم نرمال بود. صبح بابام رفت نون بخره. بعد از 6 ساعت تو صف وایسادن با یه بسته نون برگشت خونه. به هر کدوممون فقط یه تیکه کوچیک نون رسید. ولی مامانم هنوز میگفت این نرماله. شب مامان بابام تصمیم گرفتن برن بیمارستان به دیدن مجروحین. منم باشون رفتم. یک عالمه جنازه دیدیم. 4 تا رو هم دیگه لابلای هم رو هر تخت. فقط اون موقع مامانم گفت این نرمال نیست. جنگ هنوز تموم نشده. جنگ بزرگه. و ترس من هم به اندازه اون بزرگ میشه. من همیشه نگران یه جنگ تازم. اگه یه بادکنک بترکه من میترسم. اگه یه ماشین محکم ترمز بگیره من 30 متر میپرم بالا. و اگه یه بچه کوچیک داد بزنه منم باش داد میزنم. تمام شب بیدار میمونم به انتظار یک طلوع تازه. ولی هر صبحی که میاد با روزی که گذشته فرقی نمیکنه.
Every day Gaza changes, and that's why my dreams always change. Each time I take a step forward, I go 100 back. In the first hit of the war, I was going home from school and didn't know the road. Suddenly a man stood in front of me and asked me, "Where's your house?" I told him, and he took me home. I went down to the house quickly and asked my dad, "Why didn't you come get me?" My mom said, "It's normal, dear. Go study." I told her, "There are no exams. The war started." In the afternoon, they hit a government building near us. And my mom said, "It's normal. We are used to what is happening to us." We went running to the neighbors, each one looking out for themselves. After minutes, the neighbors' relatives started coming, and the house became packed with more than 100 people in it. But still, things stayed normal for my mother. In the morning, Dad went to go buy bread and stood in line for 6 hours and came home with only 1 pack of bread. Each of us got half a loaf, and still my mom said, "Normal." In the evening, my parents decided to go to the hospital and visit the injured, and I went with them. In the hospital, we saw so many corpses, 4 on each bed, under and on top of each other. Only then my mother said, "This is not normal." The war isn't over. The war is big, and my fear is to grow up with it. I'm always scared of a new war. If a balloon bursts, I'm scared. If a car hits a strong brake, I jump 20 meters. And if a small kid yells, I start yelling with him. I stay up all night waiting for a new dawn. But each morning that comes does not differ from the one that's past.
Ali Al-Hassani, age 15, born 1995, Al-Safdawi Street. The thing I love most in Gaza is that it's not like any other country. Other countries have lots of problems: famine, siege, division, occupation, bombing, destruction, and death. But we have none of these issues. That's why I love Gaza a lot, especially that the sewage and the streets are clean and people love one another. Prices are cheap, everyone is happy, and the fish are healthy and do not swim in the sewage. And that I definitely will not die of hunger, poverty, or a heart attack that half my relatives died from because of so much happiness. I want to tell you a big secret that I'm holding in my chest and hesitating to say it since I started speaking. The secret is, my dear folks, I'm the reason for the war on Gaza. You might be surprised as to why. Because I never had a dream that didn't come true. One night before the war, I dreamed that the war started and our house was bombed. And I was the only survivor. The next day, at 11:25, the airstrikes began on Gaza. The first shock I got in the war was when the strongest teacher in the school, the math teacher, hid under the desk in fear from the first second. I thought, if the strongest teacher hides under the desk, what do we do? A lot of kids peed themselves. I started screaming, and everyone started screaming with me. I was screaming for our house that I was sure was destroyed, and for my family that I was sure was martyred. I went out running in the streets, wanting to rush home to my family, but I waited for 2 hours for a car to take me. And at the end, I went home walking all the way I was imagining our house destroyed and my family dead. I got home and found nothing was the matter, and my family were taking down the windows so they wouldn't break from the air pressure. But till today, I'm scared they will bomb our house. That's why, you can ask my mom, I sleep with 3 mattresses under me, so that when there is bombing, the mattresses will absorb the hits and nothing will happen to me. I hate dreaming, but dreams are not in our control. I think that Ali, that's me, before the war is different from Ali after the war, who is a new person that I'm trying to discover. Before the war, I didn't understand anything about politics. I didn't know head of state from prime minister. I never listened to news. But today, I became a political analyst. Al Jazeera this morning, midday, this evening, harvest of the day, harvest of the week. I started following all these programs and discussing them. I started feeling that politics and news are very important in our life because they are what kills us and what gives us life. And also because I want to be the first to know if there is going to be another war.
Fatima Abu Hashem, age 14, born 1996, El Jala Street. When I talk to Palestinian kids in Europe, I feel sorry for them and I don't wish to be like them because they're in the diaspora. They plant their dreams in a land that's not theirs. Dreams grow with the people and the country. I love life, love to play, and love people. I wish I could be the president of Palestine for one day so I can enrich love and peace between people, end the hatred and spite in their hearts, and end the internal division. This would be my first presidential decision. But unfortunately, I'm not president, and that's why there was a war. The war opened up with bombing like rain. We came running out of the school in fear and found the whole world running in the streets. People were looking for their sons and sisters and mothers. Everyone was running with their heads raised to the sky. Honestly, they looked strange. I saw one of them running from a distance, wearing pajamas, barefoot, and running. When I first saw her, I didn't recognize her. But when I got close to her, wow, that's my uncle's wife. The chic one who doesn't leave the house without looking top-notch. Then I was sure the war had started. It's been more than a year since we've been talking about the war. We lived it and continue to live it each day in detail. Because the TV, the phone, and the doorbell are all things that remind me of the war, and I don't like them. You know, I even threw away my mobile. And I'm most scared of being alone. I think, what would I do if a war starts and I'm alone? Who will protect me? And when I'm with my family, I start to think how I would protect them. I had a big dream to become an actress. But this dream started shrinking slowly because people in my country don't look at an actress in a positive way, even though acting is important and allows me to relay the picture of the suffering of my country and society to the world. I have a second dream if the first doesn't work out, to be a journalist. And the third dream is to make a family that I love and who love me. The fourth is for us to be free and for the flag of Palestine to fly freely. And the fifth is to see people happy without death, destruction, deprivation, or war. And the sixth and last is for me to finish this monologue and come down from the stage.
Fatima Atala, age 14, born 1996, Sheikh Radwan. Gaza's fish ran away, but people were not able to. They opened the sewage into the sea, And if the sea could talk, it would tell them, shame on you for what you are doing to Gaza and me. Instead of acting and music schools, Gaza became a school for shooting and murder. I'm very scared by nature. I'm scared of cockroaches and birds, and I worry day and night. And the first day of the war, all the girls went home except me. I was the last one to leave school. I was sitting there shaking. I couldn't stand on my legs. Finally, I felt that if I don't help myself, no one would. I gathered my courage and stood up, shaking, and I walked like a tree in the wind, all of me trembling. People were walking near me, but no one felt me. And the sounds of the rockets got louder, and the horror in my heart grew deeper. Like usually, the distance from school to my house is half an hour. But that day, I got home in 15 minutes because of my fear. It was the time that I was the most scared in my life. Every second, I thought I would die. It was the first time I felt this terrible loneliness, even though the streets were full of people. I got home and I stood at the window. A rocket fell near our house and I flew off the ground and I fell on my back. For the whole war, I couldn't stand at the windows. I started sleeping in a room that doesn't have a single window. I think I'm still scared today, but I pretend not to be.
Muhammad Al-Umrani, age 15, born 1995. الشجاعية المنطار. Gaza, the warm arms and the fire of hell. Horror, fear, death, and destruction. But this time, our area is safe. Every time the occupation attacks, they hit us first. But it looks like this time they got bored of our area and wanted to make some changes. We got lucky. I used to spend the whole day sitting on a chair, watching people running away from their houses towards the borders, carrying their belongings, their sons, daughters, and going west. Some of them were carrying their kids on their shoulders and their mothers on their backs. Where were they going? You didn't know till all of Gaza got squeezed into one area. Then the distance became tighter and they started running away from the mosque. And then it became tighter and tighter until they got to our house. I said to my father, what, is it our turn now? But where will we go? Where are we going to go? And my father insisted that we stayed at home and said, a person who leaves his house loses his dignity. I said to myself, okay, kid, you got to stay put. You're no better than the others. And whatever is going to happen will happen. All day, I would busy myself with food, and sometimes we'd go fill the water with my cousins from the pipes on the street, about 1,000 meters from our house. We used to take Sabri's donkey cart. Him and his brother used to come with us to help all the way. All the way, he would tell us about his heroic acts and his horrors and how he'd go into the wilderness and hunt birds with his slingshot. I never carried a slingshot. It's scary. But the stories were nice. And in those days, entertaining, despite our fear. We used to talk to each other to lessen our fear of being in the streets. When daytime was over and the night came, we would say, the night has come with all its worries. We couldn't even sleep. I used to sleep for 15 minutes and be awake for 3 hours. How can one sleep with the bombs going on and you're lying in your bed just waiting for your fate? Sometimes I'd look out into the sky from the edge of my window and find the world so red with fire and smoke. And I'd ask myself, why is the whole world at rest and we're living an inferno?
Ahmed Kassem, age 15, born 1995, Al-Saftawi Street. My grandmother and I were home alone. She was telling me stories about the days of our country, funny stories and sad ones. But she never told me a complete story because she always had to go to the bathroom halfway through. My grandma spends half her time in the room and the other time in the bathroom. My parents came back at 10:30 at night and they went to sleep straight away. I couldn't sleep. I was lying in my bed, awake, writing my homework. Suddenly there was the sound of a distant explosion. I went to my parents' room and took the radio to hear the news. I woke up my father and I said, I heard the sound of a strong explosion. He said, be quiet, go to bed. It's just aimless shooting. Anyway, I went back to bed and the electricity was out. Suddenly, there was a huge explosion that shook my world. I pulled the blanket up to cover my face and something fell on me. It was the frame from the window. And I lifted the blanket up with all of my strength. And the blanket was covered with glass. And our entire apartment was filled with black smoke. It was the day that they hit the workers' union right next to our house. But that's not the point. The point is all of the stupid things that happened and for which I can't find an explanation. First, the world was on fire and we all felt that we will die. But my grandmother was looking for her false teeth. She was afraid that when she died, people would find out she had no teeth. Like they didn't know already. Second, the house was full of smoke, but my father lit a cigarette and smoked as if we needed any more smoke. Third, my uncle called to find out if we were okay. And my father told him, we're all fine, thank God. But all of the windows in the house are broken except one. And my uncle told him to break it. And he did. And I don't know why I'm telling you this story. All I know is we're living in a cage a prison, like a encaged bird who wants to come out, but he's besieged. Kids are dying in front of their mother's eyes. Hearts are crying for them and screaming in the loudest voice, but no one hears. No one's heart softens, and no one seems to care.
Mahmoud Abu Sha'ban, age 14, born 1996, الرمال. بدكم تقولوا عني مجنون، مهستر، مخرفن، قولوا، مش مهم، ما عادت تفرق معي. الصحيح اللي عم بيصير معي مش طبيعي، يعني اني افقد ثقتي باصحابي عادي، في كتير فاقدين ثقتهم بالناس. بس اللي محيرني ومدوخني انه فاقد ثقتي في ازاز المحلات، السيارات، مراكز الشرطة ومناطق المشبوهة. وضمن فلسفتي في غزة، كل غزة مناطق مشبوهة. من الآخر كل شي انضرب في الحرب بخاف أقرب عليه اليوم. بعرفش أمشي في الشارع، بكون ماشي على اليمين بخاف، بتني على اليسار بخاف، برجع أمشي على اليمين وبضل بهالدوامة. يعني وين لازم أمشي؟ في نص الشارع؟ ما هو أول يوم حرب كنت في محل أخوي اللي بيبيع كمبيوترات وإكسسوارات للجوال، وقعت ميدالية على الأرض. أخوي قال لي علقها، فجأة وأنا بعلقها سمعت صوت صواريخ، الإزاز هال علي وصاوبني. خفت، والله ما خفت على حالي، خفت على أخوي وهو كمان تصاوب. أخوي خاف على أهل الدار، قال لي ولك اطلع على البيت طمن عليهم. كنت طالع على الدرج ومش خايف، طمنت عليهم كلهم كانوا بخير الحمد لله. طلعت على الشارع عشان أعرف وين صار الانفجار. سمعنا أصوات انفجارات كتيرة، وغزة صارت من كتر الدخان ليل أسود، بس أنا ما كنتش خايف. نسيت أحكي لكم، أخوي كان معه كاسة شاي في أول الانفجار، وقعت من إيده وانكسرت. فكركم الخوف؟
Mahmoud Balawi, age 15, born 1995, Ashati camp. I want to write the most beautiful words about Gaza, but I can't. I can't not see the poverty, siege, and famine, especially when all Gaza City flooded into Al Arish and emptied it from all goods in 2 hours. I can't not see the deprivation in every house, the fear and the sickness. What do you want me to say about Gaza? From when I became aware of it, I was sad about everything inside it, especially the kids and even the adults, youth, women, girls, animals, stones, and trees. Everything in it is crying. I'm looking for nice words to say, and I can't find them. The sea is the only thing that helps me dream. When I stand on the shore, I can imagine Cyprus, travel to Paris, fly to Rome, all while standing in the same spot. I go around the whole world, and in the end, I land on my bed in our house in the middle of the refugee camp. I go back to the reality of Gaza, the dirty market, the overflowing sewage, the carts and what's on top of the carts, suffocating smell, and the silent people who can't speak. When I look at the clock and it's 11:55, I start shaking, and my heart beats faster, and I feel that the war started again. Not only the clock scares me, but everything that flies does, even the flies. I can't tell anyone about my fear so they don't call me a wimp or a sissy. I'm most scared for my older brothers. When a fly lands on any of them, I feel it's going to kill them. I start shouting and I run away from the place. That's why I'm now escaping outside of the house all the time, because of the many flies.
Mahmoud al-Turk, age 16, born 1994, Al-Jala Street. قبل از جنگ هنوز یک کودک بودم. اما بعد از جنگ فهمیدم که دیگه کودک نیستم و غزه هم برخلاف همه شهرهای جهان کودک ندارد. لحظه شروع جنگ داشتم در کوچه بازی می‌کردم که دیدم همه همسایه‌ها دارن فرار می‌کنن. پرسیدم چه خبره؟ بهم گفتن ارتش اسرائیل به همسایه‌ها گفته که قرار خونه‌ها رو بمبارون کنن. دوان رفتم خونه تا به پدر و مادرم بگم. در کمتر از 1 دقیقه همه خونه رو ترک کردیم و فرار کردیم. تنها چیزی که با خودمون بردیم اجاق گاز بود. آخه گاز در غزه از طلا هم گرونتره. در اون لحظه احساس کردم که دیگه هرگز به خونه بر نمیگردم. ما رفتیم به خونه پدر بزرگم. روز بعد اداره اطلاعات اسرائیل به خونه پدر بزرگم زنگ زد و گفت که اونجا بمبارون خواهد شد. ما اونجا رو هم ترک کردیم و رفتیم پیش پدر بزرگ دیگم، پدر مادرم. 5 خانواده دیگه هم اونجا بودن، همه خاله هام و خانواده هاشون. من و پسر خاله هام کلی رفیق شدیم. ما هر شب تمام شب بیدار میموندیم و در مورد جنگ صحبت میکردیم. من خسته بودم، ترسیده بودم و فقط میخواستم برم خونه و روی تخت و بالش خودم بخوابم. 3 روز بعد خونه همسایه ها بمبارون شد. بعد از بمبارون همه محل به خونه های خودشون برگشتن، ما هم. و من بالاخره برگشتم اتاقم. اما دیگه خواب به چشمام نمی اومد. خیلی وقته که به سفر کردن فکر میکنم. در کانادا یک عمویی دارم که همیشه برام یه سری ویدیو از خونش و خانواده‌اش در کانادا برام میفرسته. ویدیو از خودشون در مغازه ها میفرستن، از کنار ساحل دریا. در پس زمینه همه این تصویرها همیشه یه سری دختر کانادایی هست. انگار که الان تنها نیاز من این باشه. انگار که عموم داره به هم طعنه میزنه. حالا چند وقتی هست که شب و روز به کانادا فکر میکنم. برای همینم هست که الان بازیگری میکنم. به خودم میگم اگه همه چی ردیف شه و بازیگر بشم، شاید اون وقت بتونم برم کانادا، یک کانادایی بشم، با یک کانادایی ازدواج کنم، بچه‌های کانادایی داشته باشم. کانادایی‌ها به چه زبونی حرف میزنن؟ مهم نیست. من کانادایی یاد میگیرم. ولش کن. برام اصلا مهم نیست. اونا عمرن نمیفهمن که من یک عرب در کانادا هستم. آخه من موهام بوره و چشمام آبی.
Mahmoud Afana, age 15, born 1995, Al-Saftawi Street. If you want to call me a coward, do so. Because after the war, I don't answer any kid who swears at me or even hits me. I'm just sad. I leave him and walk away. Before the war, I wasn't like that. The flying bird would avoid me. Why did this happen to me? Because honestly, after I saw so many kids dying in the war, I started to feel that all of us are going to die. It's just a bit delayed. I said to myself, kid, you're bigger than that. I started to feel that I was 100 years old. The war ended on the ground, but it's still there in my head. I want to be like any child in this world, not in the world, at least not in Jerusalem. When I chat to my cousins who are living in Jerusalem on the net, I feel that they are living their childhood and they don't think like me at all. I'm scared to tell them what I'm thinking so they don't think I'm weird. I pretend to be listening to them and I lie to them. They didn't live what we lived in the war. My family and that of my uncle and grandfather all went to live at my uncle Anan's place because it was far away from the war and it was a safe area, or so we thought. And the next day, there was bombing on the street next to my uncle's house, and the wall behind the house collapsed. The third day, there was bombing on the street. The third day, my uncle, at whose house we were staying, went to buy faul and falafel for breakfast. When he returned, he parked the car at the door of his house, and before he went down from the car, a rocket fell on him. The upper half of his body fell on the asphalt, and when the ambulance came, they took out the lower half from the car. The paramedics went and collected the upper half in a plastic bag, and they took him to the hospital. Everybody started wailing and screaming. And my mother started asking God to bring him back safe. I don't know, was she lying to herself or to us? Of course my uncle didn't come back, and he won't come back safe.
Mahmoud Najem, age 16, born 1994, Sheikh Rodwan. For the first time, the streets of Gaza were clean. There wasn't a paper or a cardboard. People were collecting the paper from the streets to use it for baking because the electricity was disconnected. My mom didn't want to bake. She asked me to go bring bread from the oven. The queue at the oven stretched from Gaza to the West Bank. People would line up for 8 hours to get their turn and take half a pack of bread. In seconds, a Palestinian rocket launcher was erected in the area, and in less than 1 second, the Israeli planes started bombing it. People began running in all directions, and the ambulances came. People started falling dead. Others were injured. I was in shock, and people in the street started telling me, "Thank God you're safe." Anyway, I went back home without the loaf of bread, and my mom yelled at me. But till today, she doesn't know why I didn't bring the loaf of bread. Hiba Dawood, age 15, born 1995, The Harbor. When I was 5 years old, we went to Tiberias one day. It was a very beautiful city, like a paradise. As we were going home on the bus, someone called the driver and told him not to take the Jerusalem road because Sharon had entered the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Only then I realized that Tiberias is not ours. I'm in the Rimal school near the Ministry of Passports, which was first hit by the war. All the ministry flew into the school. All the girls started crying except me. I was laughing. Until today, I don't know why I was laughing. When I went home and turned the TV on, I saw all the buildings around our school destroyed, with corpses lying next to each other. I saw our school, but I didn't see myself on TV, and I thanked God. I hope there won't come a day when I'm on TV, because we don't get anything from it except death. After the war, I started knowing what people are thinking even before they speak, and feeling from the look in their eyes what they want. I also started knowing things that I or someone of my age should not know. I became braver and started knowing how to speak properly, and my trust in people grew. Turns out the war had benefits. Would anyone believe that? After the war, I'm stronger and going to the future with more confident steps.
Wiam Ediri, age 13, born 1997, as Sabra. What I love most about Gaza is Barcelona Park. I used to go there 3 times a week. I would spend the whole day on the swings laughing and playing with my friends. But during the war, the occupation bulldozed it and destroyed it. I went to visit the place and started crying. I remembered where I used to play and where the swings were and my laughter with my friends. I want to be a lawyer so I can defend the people that have been victimized. And you won't find more of them than in the empire of Gaza, because I feel that Gaza is 100 countries and 1.5 million presidents. The tanks got to our house at 5 in the morning. Mama started gathering things from the house and everything turned upside down in a few seconds. Everyone started yelling and carrying what they could, and we went out running in the streets, not knowing where to go. And my grandmother said, you can only go to the schools. And the schools, our school is more beautiful than all schools. 100 of us used to sleep in one class. From the first night, I got into a fight with another girl about 1/4 meter and who was going to sleep in it. And I don't know how we slept on top of each other like a mountain of old, discarded, forgotten clothes. 3 days later, we went back to the house and the neighborhood, but a lot of things had changed. The neighborhood wasn't the same, and the people weren't the same either. And the biggest change in me is that I became a gossip. Honestly, I can't hold my tongue. Our theater trainer told me that it's normal in Gaza. All Gaza gossips about each other. But the difference between me and the people in Gaza is that they don't admit that they are gossiping, while I admit in my full mental capacities that I am a gossip. And sometimes I find no one to gossip about, so I gossip about myself.
Yasmin Jarour, age 14, born 1996, Al-Daraj. Our future in Gaza is obscure and unknown, like a calm volcano that can erupt at any second. As if we were on a boat without a captain in the midst of the raging sea, going right and left and not knowing where to lean. I hear that in other countries, childhood is sacred, and children live their lives without problem and fear. But Gaza's children are forgotten and outside of the picture. They are the ones that feel the injustice the most, because society treats them like they are not kids when it wants. It makes them adults when it wants. It turns them to being children when it wants. And most people deal with them like they are only bodies, not minds. When I see a child pedaling in a street or working in a shop, I imagine how children of the world are playing, resting, and feeling free. Honestly, my heart breaks for them. And sometimes I cry. Gaza has no tenderness and no childhood. A boy is born a man here, and a girl is born a bride. Dad, before the war, was a lot more tender with me. I wish he would take me in his arms like before. But God, help him. He's probably worried too. Because in a war, we lost 5 anonymous of land in a second. They feel that 60 years old hit by a rocket from the Israeli army, which burned all the oranges in it. My father, my brother, and myself could have been killed by the rocket because we were close to the window. If Dad hadn't thrown me on the ground, all the shrapnel would have hit me. After the war, I visited Rafah crossing, and I saw the flag of Palestine and Egypt next to each other, yet separated by a wire. I felt the difference between the two flags, and that this wire is the border of the big prison that we live in. I felt how stupid and unjust is the world. And I felt like breaking all borders and ending all differences between races and religion, so that everyone in the world would be brothers. My dream became to live in a safe country, even in a small island, small village, in a distance, far away island at the end of the world.
Yasmin Abu Amr, born 1996, age 14, Al-Shujaya. I want to be a specialist in the science of metaphysics. What is behind nature? You know why? Because I think that Gaza itself is behind nature, and I got so much from my presence here in Gaza that I'd like to transfer my experience to others. The Shujaya camp is always the center of events. Each time the occupation wants to invade Gaza, they pass by our house. When the war began, people left their houses, thinking that Shujaya would be hit. It's normal in this case to leave our house. Everyone was calling my dad to convince him to leave the house. My brother's from Algeria, my uncle's from the States, my uncle's from Ankara. The whole world was begging my dad, and he wouldn't budge, refusing to leave the Shujaya. 3 days with my mom having packed the house stuff, and we're suspended in travel mode. We want to go to my sister's house because it's safer there. After we were exhausted from talking, he agreed, and he said, "You go, and I'll follow." How can we go and leave him? My mom was smart. She left the bread at home, and you know how dear bread was in the war. As soon as we got to my sister's house, she called him and said, "Salman, we forgot the bread. Bring it for us." And Salman fell in the trap and brought the bread, and we wouldn't let him leave. The next morning, we woke up to a phosphorus bomb that fumed the street. We all started crying, our tears falling because of the phosphorus. The bomb was easier on us than Dad's taunting. He said, "I told you, let's stay home. It's better for us. There's no place like home." And on it went. What added fuel to the fire is that the mosque and the house next to my sister's house were destroyed in the bombing. And you can imagine what my dad did to us. He wanted to take us back home immediately. No sooner had he finished his words than we were told that the house next to ours in Shujaya was bombed and the front of our house was ripped off. Then, for the first time, all of us looked at Dad. We stayed at my sister's place. It became clear to us that wherever we were in Gaza during the war, we were not safe. After the war, I started always to dress in a very clean and tidy way so that if I die, I would die a nice death. But it would be the biggest problem if I was hit by a rocket because I'd become 100 pieces and I'd like to die in one piece. Wow. Gaza and Gaza's dreams. Our dream has become to die a good death, not live a good life.
Yasmin Katebe, age 14, born 1996, Al-Sheikha Razban. When the war started, my mom, my brothers and sisters and I were in Russia, which made me always worried about that. We wanted to leave Russia and return to Gaza among our family to leave the events with them. As soon as the war ended and the crossings opened, we returned to Gaza, and from then till today, we have been hearing stories of the war. I couldn't sleep in Russia because of my worry about that. Before the war, when the mobile used to ring and it would be from Gaza, we'd be happy and race to answer it. But in the war, every time the mobile rang from Gaza, any number, whether we knew it or not, we'd say, "Dear God," and start looking at each other to see who will answer. After the war, lots of things changed in me. I started seeing things differently. I began to like the city. Life became more beautiful. So did I. My friends changed, and I made older and more mature ones. I became very outspoken and brave, even in front of my dad. And I could face anyone. Mom and I became friends. A lot of times we stay up at night and talk about everything. In the future, if I grow up, and in Gaza, it's an achievement to grow up because death is standing at your doorstep. I want to be a children's caretaker and defend their rights because I feel that the children of Palestine are born as old people. A kid can be 6 years old and yet supporting a family.
Thank you so much for joining us and listening to these monologues from youth in Gaza, which are unfortunately reverberating across time to our present moment, making them more relevant than ever before. In a moment, you will see information about where the youth are right now. This information was provided to us by ASHTAR Theatre, who were in touch with the original director of the Gaza Monologues. If he has not been able to get in touch with someone, you'll see the phrase "current status unknown." After that, you'll see a collage of images from the original production in Gaza and several other productions within Palestine as well, from 2010, including Ramallah, Jerusalem, the Golan Heights. If you're able to stay on after, we'll also share some resources.